Hello. Okay, old school movie reviews. Okay, this time we like to talk about Last House on the Left. This is the original 1972 version by Wes Craven. I have not seen the remake at all. Just want to look at this movie because I'd always heard of it and I'd never seen it until fairly recently, and I think it's a really interesting and fascinating movie. It's not really an exceptionally well-made professional film, or I should say, well, it's not like a great film on a technical level, but it is very chilling and it is a very effective horror movie. And I think historically it's important too. So, I'll just say off the bat, if you're a fan of the horror genre, if you're a fan of horror movies, definitely check it out. If you're interested in films of the 70s or you just retro things, I would say check it out too because it kind of represents a time in America where the American film studio system was kind of changing, and the old ways of things were doing things were kind of dying off, and a lot of independent movies and different types of directors and things were starting to make headway. So check it out for that reason. I'll just say up front though, if you have a weak stomach or if certain types or depictions of brutality and things like that bother you, then just give it a pass because it is genuinely disturbing. And I mean it's disturbing on like an emotional level, not just like on a gore or gross out level. Um, like I said, it's a early film by Wes Craven. Most people probably know him from doing Nightmare on Elm Street and the Scream movies. I think he did the original version of The Hills Have Eyes and other things. And it was also produced by Sean S. Cunningham, who directed the first Friday the 13th movie. This movie is also pretty much famous for the infamous tagline of "Just tell yourself it's only a movie. It's only a movie." Basically, the plot concerns these two girls who are more or less, well, they're basically just kidnapped, molested, raped, and eventually killed on their way to a rock concert. And through a series of coincidences, the gang of killers end up at the home of one of the girls and meet the parents, and then some more unpleasantness ensues. Um, the Last House on the Left is a movie that's got a real lasting reputation as being particularly gritty and shocking. I think one of the reasons for this is, well, first of all, just in the manner that it was shot. It's a very low budget film, even for the early 70s, and a substantial amount was filmed with like handheld cameras, and this kind of helps give the movie this almost pseudo documentary feel. So it almost feels or looks like these events could actually be happening. Another aspect of the movie is that makes it disturbing is, it's not just the blood that's shown, even though there is some explicit blood here and there. But I feel it's just the way that certain scenes are played out in a cinematic way, where the audience isn't necessarily titillated or jolted by the violence, but you are really made to feel uncomfortable emotions. I mean, the visuals, the camera work kind of lingers, and the scene plays out in such a way that forces the characters and the viewers. You're really forced to kind of acknowledge the unpleasantness of what's just occurred on the screen. And I think another thing that's important about this film is that there's absolutely no supernatural aspect to the movie at all. There's no Freddy Krueger type character. There's no 6'5" stuntman in a mask dressed up like Jason or Michael Myers. All the violence is perpetrated by people who look like they could be ordinary criminals. They look like ex-con junkie guys, and so this kind of heightens the realism and kind of heightens the horror of the story. Now, one thing that did bother me about this movie is once or twice, or at least one scene in particular, there's a real odd tonal shift in a movie. This upbeat music comes on the soundtrack, and it's like it's that's not the exact melody, but it's that type of music is being played while we're watching the bad guys saying and do certain things. And I guess it was just to show what like low life guys these are, what creepy, awful, uneducated, idiots they are. But it's the scenes kind of played for humor, and it's like these people have just done something pretty awful, and it's like, should we really be kind of laughing at them like they're the Apple Dumpling Gang? Um, there is some other comedy relief in the movie that's a little bit more appropriate, and it's provided by a couple of policemen in there. And one of them is played by Martin Kove. Martin Kove is this character actor from the '80s who's been in a million things. People probably know him from The Karate Kid. I think his character was named Kreese, Sweep the Leg. And I remember him, he was on Cagney and Lacey TV show. I can't remember the name of his character, but he was like the cool macho guy detective at the Squad. I think other problems the movie has, just plot wise, there's a character kind of instantly knows something that the audience would know, but that character shouldn't know. And I do know just from like paying attention to the behind the scenes material, they kind of said originally they were planning the plot to go one way, and then they changed their mind about who's going to live, who's going to die, and what point it's going to happen. But and they did mention that in some editions of the film that were released, certain scenes were cut out, but there's a scene in there that's in my version, and it's there, and I think it's a plot flaw. Another point, somebody does one of these like movie fall downs, you know, when somebody's in a panic and they fall down, and they don't fall down the way a normal person would fall down. They fall down like they fall down in movies, and it just kind of bugs me. I think another interesting thing is there's kind of an interesting subtext where I think the filmmakers were also kind of maybe trying to comment on the changing times in a small, limited way. There's some minor small talk from, you know, from the protagonist as well as the antagonist, kind of acknowledging things of women's lib, people walking around with no bras. Without giving too much away, peace symbol shows up as a significant symbol that does, it is connected to the plot. But you know, nowadays, you know, you see people with a peace symbol T-shirt or a piece of jewelry, whatever, and it really doesn't mean too much now. But you know, 40 years ago, it was a real powerful, you know, cultural symbol, and it suggested all types of things about, you know, the generation gap and people's alleged politics and etc. So I think the mere fact that it's used in this type of film, well, one thing being used in this particular film, obviously, of course, it connects it to the year it was made, but I think it also kind of subtly kind of comments that, you know, that sort of hippie dream is over, you know, and, you know, these are different times now, you know, and I think the film is trying to make the statement on that same note that, you know, the real horror and real terror and things, you know, it's not going to come from werewolves or vampires or anything like that. It's going to come from like the shadowy, shady corners of everyday society. Okay, so once again, I would say if you're interested in like old school horror movies, this is a movie that predates all the 80s things, the Friday the 13th, the Halloweens and things like that. It predates Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I think was 1974 or whatever. And actually, it's probably on a technical level, probably a better movie technically. But like I said, this is like that sort of proto slasher horror gritty feel to it. So once again, you know, thank you very much for listening. Tell me what you think. Tell me if you disagree with me. Let me know anything I missed. Once again, thanks a lot, and you have a good one.